Before I tell you what happened after my daughter got $33 million, make sure you're subscribed. Because what she did next destroyed everything I thought I knew about her, and what happened 3 days later shocked me to my core. I was still holding my coffee when she looked me in the eye and said, "Mom, you need to leave." The words didn't just sting. They cut through everything I'd built. $33 million had landed in her lap overnight, and suddenly, I was disposable. I blinked. "Wait, what? You're serious?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I need space. This is my life now. And you're holding me back." I wanted to laugh. This was my daughter, the same little girl who used to curl up next to me during thunderstorms, hiding under my arm, trusting me to keep the shadows away. But the sharpness in her tone made it impossible. She wasn't my little girl anymore. She was a stranger in my daughter's body. She stepped past me and set a small suitcase by the door. My old one. As if she had been preparing for this day long before she ever got that check. "You can stay with a friend," she added, as though offering a favor rather than kicking her mother out. I tried to make sense of it. "Is this about the money? Did I do something wrong?" She sighed, an impatient, practiced sigh. "Mom, it's not about what you did. It's about what I need. And right now, I need the freedom." I watched her cross her arms, standing taller than I remembered. It wasn't just confidence. It was authority. Control. Power. $33 million will do that to a person. "I've outgrown this," she said quietly. "And I've outgrown you." The words hit harder than the front door slamming behind her. I stood there, stunned, suitcase in hand. The kitchen I had cleaned every morning for decades suddenly felt foreign. The sunlight through the window seemed too bright, too exposing, as if it was revealing the cracks I hadn't noticed before. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled, a flash of something secret, something I wasn't meant to see. I asked myself if I was imagining it. Could someone really change that fast? Could someone with your face and your voice, your daughter, turn into a stranger overnight? I wanted to follow her, to plead, to reason. But she didn't look back. She didn't hesitate. She just walked away, letting the door click behind her. And in that click, something inside me whispered that this was only the beginning. That the real storm wasn't outside on the street, but already gathering inside the walls of our home. Something was wrong. I didn't yet know what, but my gut tightened as I stood there, alone, holding that suitcase, wondering how my own child had turned into a stranger in the space that was once hers, and mine. Didn't sleep well that night. Not from exhaustion, but from a gnawing sense that something wasn't right, something I couldn't name yet. By morning, the apartment felt smaller, heavier. Every familiar corner seemed suspicious. My daughter's new world had already begun to creep into mine, and I wasn't even inside it anymore. The first red flag hit with her calls. Normally, she'd chat with friends for hours, laughing, joking. But now, she was glued to her phone, whispering into it like she was hiding something. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd smile too quickly. "Just business stuff, Mom. Don't worry." But worry settled anyway. Then came the paperwork. She started helping me organize accounts, making notes, insisting we simplify transfers. I thought it was thoughtful. I thought it was efficiency. But now, looking back, I realized how carefully she maneuvered around me, always controlling what I could see, always keeping a step ahead. Even meals felt different. She'd dismiss me from conversations, turn off music I loved, laugh at jokes I didn't get, and watch me as though testing how far she could push. It wasn't malicious, not yet. But the confidence behind her smiles made me uneasy. One evening, she asked me to sign a stack of documents I didn't fully understand. "It's just routine," she said, her tone casual, bordering on impatient. I hesitated. She leaned closer, voice soft but insistent. "Trust me, Mom. It'll make everything easier. I did trust her. Always had. But the hesitation in my gut was growing louder, a quiet alarm I couldn't ignore. Money began to feel like a weapon. Small withdrawals, transfers I hadn't authorized, subtle, almost invisible. Every time I asked, she'd brush it off, often with a small laugh, saying, "Mom, you worry too much. It's all fine." But the laughter didn't reach her eyes. Something behind it was calculating, precise. Even the people around her changed. Friends I didn't know appeared at our door. Business associates I hadn't met. She seemed to move in a different orbit now, one I couldn't touch. And she treated their presence like a demonstration, a subtle reminder that she was no longer a child, and I was no longer in charge. At night, when I tried to speak to her about any of it, she would cut me off. "I'm busy, Mom. Really busy." Then she'd leave the room with a practiced grace that made me feel like an intruder in my own home. And yet, I couldn't pinpoint anything concrete. Just instincts, hints, suspicions. The small anomalies, the phone calls, the documents, the smiles that didn't reach her eyes. 3 days in, I realized the house I once controlled, the daughter I once guided, had become a place where I wasn't even allowed to notice the shadows forming. Something was wrong. I didn't know how far it went, or if it was deliberate. But my intuition screamed that this was no ordinary growing up phase. And deep down, I feared that the daughter I thought I knew was already slipping away. I never expected the truth to arrive in an envelope. 3 days after she threw me out, a plain manila folder was slipped under my friend's door. No return address. Just my name, typed neatly on the front. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Inside were copies of bank statements, legal documents, and authorizations, pages I had never signed, documents I had never agreed to. My stomach turned as I skimmed through them. Power of attorney. Full control over accounts I had managed for decades. Access revoked. Transfers already made. Money that she hadn't just earned, it had been my life's work, and she had quietly shifted it into her own name. I read her handwriting in the notes, the careful signatures, the subtle adjustments to dates. Every page screamed premeditation. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a careless mistake. This was calculated. I felt my chest tighten. My heart hammered in disbelief. I reread the first page, hoping my eyes had deceived me. But no. The documents were real. Legal. Signed, though not by me. I called the bank, my voice shaky. "Who submitted these documents?" A pause. Then, quietly, "Your daughter." The word echoed through me like a physical blow. My own daughter. My little girl. My child. And she had done this. I sank into a chair, staring at the ceiling. Rage bubbled under the shock. Heartbreak followed closely behind. How could she? How could the child I raised, the one I stayed up nights worrying about, decide that erasing me from my own life was acceptable? I thought back to the small signs I had ignored, the secret calls, the just business smiles, the insistence on handling my finances, the casual laughter when I questioned transfers. All the red flags I had brushed aside, telling myself I was overreacting, now lined up like a trail of breadcrumbs leading to this betrayal. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run to her and demand answers. But the rational part of me knew that rushing in would be foolish. She was clever, strategic, and confident. She had assumed I would be too shocked, too hurt, too scared to act. Instead, I sat there, shaking, feeling both helpless and determined. My mind raced. I had to plan. I had to think. Every action from this point needed precision. Every move counted. And beneath the disbelief and heartbreak, a quiet fire began to grow. A realization, she thought she had one. She thought 3 days were enough to erase me, to put me out of her way forever. She was wrong. Something in me shifted. The pain was still there, sharp and raw, but now it was laced with resolve. I wasn't just a mother betrayed, I was a force she hadn't accounted for. And when she came begging for help in a few days, she wouldn't find the mother she expected. She would find the reckoning she had set in motion. That night, I didn't cry. Not in the way I had before. Not in the hollow, helpless way that had consumed me when I first saw the documents. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, the manila folder open in front of me, the papers spread like evidence of a crime I couldn't yet fully process. Shock had faded. Grief still lingered, but beneath it, something stronger was stirring. Something I hadn't felt in years, clarity. I ran my fingers over the bank statements again. The dates. The transfers. The signed authorizations. Every little detail pointed to one undeniable fact: she had planned this. She had prepared. She had assumed I would crumble. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't going to. I remembered everything I had taught her, double-check signatures, read the fine print, question every decision. Irony didn't escape me. Every lesson I'd given her, she had used against me. But that meant I already knew how to fight. I knew the rules of the game she was playing. The fire inside me built quietly at first, a low hum. Then, as I traced her moves step by step, it roared. This wasn't just about money. This was about respect, trust, and proving that no one, not even my own child, could strip me of my dignity and get away with it. I remembered the first morning she'd asked me to leave. The way she had smiled at her phone while I stood there, confused. The casual authority she had assumed as if her wealth entitled her to everything. That image burned into me. I knew I couldn't confront her head-on yet. She was sharp, confident, and expecting me to react with anger or despair. But I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Not yet. Instead, I would plan. Slowly. Deliberately. Every document, every email, every transfer traced, recorded, verified. I would gather the facts, the proof, the unshakable evidence she hadn't anticipated anyone noticing. And when the time came, she wouldn't be able to talk her way out. She wouldn't be able to charm her way past the truth. The realization hit me like a lightning bolt: she had underestimated me. Thought that throwing me out, taking control, and locking me out of my life would make me powerless. She was wrong. I stood up from the table, the papers clutched in my hands. My legs felt steadier than they had in days. My chest, still tight from betrayal, was now burning with determination. I wasn't going to be a victim. I wasn't going to be a casualty of her ambition. I would take back what was mine. I would restore my life. And I would make sure she understood, just as painfully as she had made me feel, that actions have consequences. This wasn't about revenge yet. It was about reclaiming control, reclaiming strength, reclaiming myself. And in that quiet moment, alone in my kitchen, I promised myself one thing: she would regret underestimating me. Not tomorrow. Not next week. But soon. The first step of the fight was clear. And I would take it with patience, precision, and an unwavering resolve. By morning, my fear had turned into focus. I didn't rush. That was the first rule I gave myself. If she believed she had one, I would let her. Confidence made people careless, and my daughter had never been more confident than she was now. I started with the smallest, quietest steps. First, I organized everything. Bank statements, transfer confirmations, digital signatures, emails she thought I'd never see again. I created copies, hard copies and backups, labeling dates and amounts carefully. Every dollar of that $33 million left a trail. Money always does. People forget that. Then I made calls. Not to confront her. Never to confront her. I asked questions instead, innocent ones. Clarifications. "I'm just trying to understand," I said more than once. The voices on the other end didn't sound suspicious at first. But when I asked the same question twice, the answers changed. That was my second rule: lies don't stay consistent. I noted every contradiction, every pause, every nervous laugh. Meanwhile, she was living large. I saw it online. The new house photos. The champagne dinners. The captions about finally being free and new beginnings. Friends congratulated her. Commented hearts. No one asked where her mother had gone. And she never mentioned me. That hurt, but it also helped. Because it told me something important: she believed I was finished. I knew better. The trap wasn't going to be loud. It wasn't going to be dramatic, not yet. I needed her to feel safe. Untouchable. So I stayed silent. I didn't demand explanations. I didn't show up unannounced. I didn't post anything. To her, I was gone. Broken. Beaten. And she relaxed. That's when the real work began. I requested records she didn't know still had my authorization attached. I accessed files she assumed were closed. I traced the moment control shifted from shared authority to sole ownership. That single day. That single signature. The one that shouldn't have been valid. My hands shook when I found it. Not because I was scared. Because I was right. She had moved fast. Too fast. And in her rush to push me out, she'd missed something critical, a legal thread she hadn't fully cut. I smiled for the first time in days. Still, I wasn't ready to move. Not yet. I needed her comfortable. Smiling. Spending. Making choices she wouldn't make if she sensed danger. So when she finally called me, casual, almost bored, I answered calmly. "Everything okay?" she asked, as if she hadn't thrown me out of my own life. "Yes," I said softly. "I'm managing." She sounded relieved. "Good," she replied. "I was worried you might make things difficult." I looked at the evidence spread across my table. "Oh," I said. "I won't." She laughed. Hung up. And in that moment, the tension snapped tight. Because she thought she was in control. She had no idea that every step she took from now on, every purchase, every public smile, every careless move, was pushing her closer to the edge. The plan was in motion. And the climax was coming fast. The first time she realized something was wrong wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting. No confrontation. Just a phone call she wasn't expecting, one she took while sipping champagne on a balcony she had paid for with money she believed was untouchable. I know this because she told me later. Her smile froze as she listened. I imagine her pacing. I imagine her laughing it off at first, saying there must be a mistake. People like her always assume mistakes happen to other people. By the time she called me, her voice had changed. "Mom," she said, forcing calm, "did you do something?" I held the phone in my hand, steady. "Do something?" I repeated. She didn't answer right away. The next call came from her attorney. Professional. Polite. But tense. He asked questions he already knew the answers to. Questions about authorization. About timing. About a signature that shouldn't have been valid, but was. That signature was the crack in everything. Within hours, accounts were frozen. Not seized, frozen. Transactions paused mid-motion. Her cards stopped working one by one. The flood of money she'd been swimming in suddenly became still water. Panic doesn't sound like screaming. It sounds like controlled breathing breaking apart. By the next morning, we were sitting across from each other in a glass-walled conference room. She looked smaller than I remembered. Pale. Her designer jacket folded neatly beside her, as if appearances still mattered. The mediator explained it slowly. Carefully. The way you speak to someone who's about to lose everything. Shared authority had never been properly dissolved. The transfer relied on consent that was incomplete. And by pushing me out before final confirmation, she had exposed the entire structure to review. Every move she made after that, every purchase, every transfer, was now under scrutiny. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. "You planned this," she whispered. I shook my head. "No," I said. "You did." That's when the truth landed. This wasn't me stealing from her. This was me stepping aside and letting the system correct what she had broken. The room felt heavy. The silence unbearable. She reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. But I didn't squeeze back either. By the end of the meeting, the outcome was clear. Control reverted. Funds returned to a protected structure. Her access reduced to what she should have had all along. Not nothing. Just not everything. Outside, cameras waited. News travels fast when money freezes. When a $33 million fortune suddenly stumbles. She walked past them without speaking. I paused. For the first time since she threw me out, I stood tall, calm, composed, unbroken. She had believed power came from money. But power comes from patience. And as she disappeared into the crowd, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: the same door she slammed on me had just closed on her. And there was no begging yet. That part was still coming. The storm was over. Not the one outside, but the one inside me, the one that had kept my heart racing, my mind spinning, my hands trembling for days. I finally exhaled. She had lost her grip on the $33 million she had thought made her untouchable. The accounts were back under proper control. Her authority was stripped to what was legally hers. Her carefully curated image of success, built on arrogance, lies, and my displacement, was crumbling quietly, like sand slipping through her fingers. I didn't gloat. Not aloud. I didn't need to. Justice had its own voice, and it spoke loud enough for both of us to hear. For me, life returned slowly. I reclaimed routines I hadn't realized I'd lost, cooking in my kitchen, tending to the little things that made the house home. I checked the mail and smiled at bills I could handle without fear. The sense of control, stolen for a fleeting moment, came back to me, stronger than before. And my daughter? She called once. Just one message. Polite, hesitant, almost apologetic. But I didn't answer. Not yet. Some lessons are learned too late, and consequences speak louder than words. People I had once relied on, friends, colleagues, neighbors, noticed the change too. I walked taller. My voice was steady when I spoke. No one doubted me anymore. Not because I demanded respect. Because I had earned it. The poetic truth hit me one quiet evening, as I watched the sun sink behind the rooftops. You can inherit wealth. You can seize power. You can try to erase someone from your life. But you cannot steal integrity and expect it to go unpaid. She had thought throwing me out was the end. She had thought she could rewrite our story with money and force. But her empire had cracks she hadn't foreseen, and it all came tumbling down without me lifting a finger. And in that quiet collapse, I found freedom. Freedom from fear. Freedom from hurt. Freedom from the illusion that someone else's success could define my worth. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, family, a partner, anyone, tell me in the comments. I read them all. Your stories matter. And if you want more real, raw stories about betrayal, justice, and the quiet power of standing up for yourself, make sure you're subscribed. Because sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't a dramatic confrontation. It's showing up after the fall, unbroken, unshaken, and stronger than ever. And sometimes, the person who thought they had won discovers, too late, that they were never really in control.